In the Northern Song, the literati painting tradition developed around Su Dongpo and his circle in a way that emphasized individual expression. Literati artists used techniques such as linear rhythm and ink tones, often derived from calligraphic practice, to demonstrate their deep personal cultivation and learnings. An important technique that emerged from the prominence of linear rhythm was baimiao, where characterful lines were used to outline an uncolored subject matter, traditionally human figures. The ancient baimiao technique probably evolved from the practice of completing uncolored drafts for religious wall murals. Baimiao was consolidated into a painting tradition by the Northern Song artist and scholar Li Gonglin. He used this technique, associated with figural paintings and moral messages, to express his political opinions. Departing from the uncharacteristic outline used in figural paintings of his time, Li Gonglin varied the weight and appearance of his lines with hints towards his calligraphic training. The absence of colors further places the viewer's attention on Li's lines and causes the hand of the painter to be as prominent as the depicted scene. Li Gonglin's ideas on linear expression continue to be important in contemporary Chinese art. Singaporean artist Tan Kian Por was trained in the Piety style, which valued exaggerated calligraphic expressions, but later delved into the relatively neglected technique of baimiao. A formidable calligrapher, Tan portrays the subject matter in his own characteristic way, using vigorous and angular baimiao strokes to outline his flowers. In the Northern Song, literati artists were anxious to differentiate themselves from court and professional painters, who they saw as artisans. Informal and free-spirited expressions became a hallmark of a learned artist. By the Southern Song, the use of ink with a sense of immediacy became an important way in which this spirit and informality was expressed. Liang Kai, a former court artist who left to pursue Zen Buddhism, is seen as the first major artist to consistently aim for the use of ink in an informal manner. This later became known as the Xie style. Rather than preconceiving what his image would look like, Liang Kai's paintings were created through a series of uncontrolled ink washes. These washes were applied before the previous layer dried, a technique known as wet on wet. This technique resulted in random and unexpected effects. Singaporean ink artist Henry Chen saw Xie painting as a Chinese expression of abstraction and drew parallels between Xie's emphasis on immediacy and Western abstraction's ideas about motion. He uses the direct application of ink in a way that makes sense to both traditions. Sensitive to the emphasis on light and shading in Western art, Henry Chen also used wet-on-wet techniques to create ink tonalities that could feature the interplay between light and dark. As the literati tradition developed, it retained privileged status within the Chinese art world, even as it lost its elite air. Singaporean painters continue to use these techniques in their explorations of what ink art can look like today, and have in many cases successfully drawn links between the ancient roots of their expression and their contemporary experiences.